when we're able to show up as our whole selves, I think we'll be able to better understand each other. We're expecting people to just show up as one thing, but like you said, they were a mom literally 5 minutes before they walked in the building.
Hello, welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Julie Johnson. I am the founder and president here at Heart and Solutions. We are a mental health counseling agency and behavioral health agency here in Iowa. And we are still doing telehealth sessions for anybody that wants to do outpatient mental health therapy for children, teenagers, and adults.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am the Vice President at Heart and Solutions. So I'm in charge of our BHIS department. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services. And that is the program where we go in home and work with children ages 4 through 18 on different behavioral skills. And we can also see them through telehealth right now as well, or in the office or school. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Yeah, so we post on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central. So we always encourage you to make a routine out of that. If you like listening to the podcast, I know I'll get such a backlog of podcasts sometimes because I want to listen to all of them. And I only have 24 hours in the day. And so we invite you to create a routine the way that we are. Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central, batch up any task you hate doing. Put away your laundry. Chrissa and I will be putting away our laundry for the week, or do your meal prep or walk on the treadmill while you listen to it. But give yourself that carved out time so you don't have to worry about those unpleasant tasks throughout the week. And that gives you that entire week to get scheduled with your counselor or to get connected with our guests and the resources that we provide on this episode. So today we have a guest from Texas coming on. We've got Tanya J Miller. She is the blogger at Talking with Tanya. She's also an author. She is a public speaker, and she helps people with not only coaching, but specifically with leadership and with coaching in terms of people, but also organizations. And so we're really, really excited to hear from Tanya because we hear a lot in this field about individual services. And we hear a lot from, we have a lot of coaches on our episodes, and we hear a lot about one-on-one coaching, which absolutely is a great resource. But what Tanya brings is a little bit different because it also includes working with organizations and working with leadership. So welcome, Tanya. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Julie. Thank you, Chrissa. Thank you to the I Need a Counselor family. I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
So what got you into wanting to be a coach and to be a speaker and an author? It sounds like you've got a really strong message that you're bringing to people in all of these different ways. What got you into wanting to do that?
It's kind of one of those things where you've been doing it for so long because you started doing it when you were young and you didn't realize, like, back when I could say I started doing all of this, coaching wasn't as popular as a term as it was then, but pastoral care or counseling was, or either just what did they used to call us? Like a teen group leader, And so a lot of times that's the role I was in. And as I've gotten older, of course, the role expanded. But even as it expanded, I just realized this is what I've been doing forever. It's my heart. It's my passion. I really want to see people and organizations figure out their purpose, figure out their why, figure out what it is that they both have a desire to do and want to do. And so I walk with you along that journey and help you, to see what's what. And I don't know, I just love seeing people have that moment where they're like, yeah, that's me. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's you. And they just are able to just walk in it, unashamed, unorthodox, unusual, unapologetic, all of that. So
Absolutely. You use that term unapologetic as
mhm.
your as kind of one of these goals that you have for people that they
Yes.
be unapologetic and that they
Mhm.
have purpose in their
Yes.
lives. What are some of the ways that you help people to now? What causes us to be apologetic in our lives, kind of as a default, and then how
Yeah.
do we move to that unapologetic way of being in the world?
If I could tell you a quick story, Julie, I was at it's a grocery store called Sprouts here in Texas, and there was I was in the cash register line, and there was a lady in front of me, and I think she kept saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," and she forgot something, and she was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, can I go get it?" And the cashier was like, "Yes," and so by the time the lady came back, the cashier was like, why are you sorry? She's like, why do you keep, well, you've been saying sorry, sorry over and again, over again. She's like, there's no reason to be sorry. We forget stuff. Things are going to happen. She was like, we, especially as women, need to stop apologizing for everything all the time. And that stuck with me that day because literally, I'm sorry is usually everybody's response to anything. If you accidentally bump them, if you take their spot, like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And so when I thought about that, I thought about it when it comes to your purpose and who you are. A lot of times, so many people are afraid to be who they are because they're worried if they'll be judged, they'll be worried if they can actually be who they are or do the things that they want to do. And so from that standpoint, they're sorry about it. They're apologetic about it. But when it comes to your purpose, when it comes to getting help in therapy and counseling, whatever it is, that is what you need to work on. You shouldn't be sorry about it. You should be literally that dedicated to it that you're unapologetic about getting there. So that's where it comes
Absolutely. It reminds me of have you guys watched Dead to Me on Netflix?
Not the newest season yet, but yes.
from. Yep.
There's
Same
a
here. I haven't
character,
watched the newest
Judy,
one.
and
Mm-hmm.
every other word out of her mouth is sorry, I'm sorry, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of her because I know that it is very tempting to feel badly about things that aren't hurting other people. And we want to make amends when we hurt other people. We want to be apologetic when we hurt others. But being who we are doesn't hurt anybody. And yet we feel like because sometimes who we are or what our life purpose is or what our goals are, they're not what other people want for us. And
Yeah.
so then we feel like we're harming other people by not acting the way that they want us to act, where that doesn't hurt them. It only hurts the other person because they're putting an expectation on us that we're not meeting. And that's what's harmful to the other person. But we say we're sorry about it.
We do.
So, how does this kind of tie in with organizations and leadership at organizations? That leadership and organizational leadership is actually one of my passions,
Yes.
and it's what I studied, and I love it. And so it's an exciting topic because gosh, we spend so much of our lives at work and our leadership team has a big impact on what that 40 hours a week feels like and what that experience is like. And so it's so important for everybody's lives that leadership skills be visible and be actively worked on, because it impacts not only the leadership team in the organization, but it impacts everybody in that organization and their families. Like your child feels it, right, when you're having stress at work. So tell me about how how you help people to be unapologetic and to be purposeful in organizations and in leadership.
There's kind of two approaches that I kind of go to operate in. Sometimes I'm invited in to speak to, let's say, the employees or the average employer coworker, and it's just kind of talking to them about, even though they may be in this role or that role, and it's not a leadership title, you're still an individual contributor. And as the individual contributor, you have personal ownership to be a leader in whatever it is that you do. And so, in that standpoint, it's kind of breaking down, kind of that high level of strategic initiative or that high level goal to how does it drill down into you and what's your role and what's your part from a ownership and leadership situation. The other way is when I'm actually coming in and speaking with leadership teams or even executive leadership, and it's getting them on the same page. It's getting them to really coming up with actual achievable initiatives and goals, because a lot of times in corporate organizations, they have this huge high level goal, but there's no work and no consensus on how to get there. And so a lot of times it's bringing the dialogue and bringing the language to what it is you desire to do, and how do you communicate it? How do you what's the language around it? And then what are the expectations of how it's perceived? A lot of times, I guess you could say, I give them homework. I give the leaders and the leadership team homework, because a lot of times, you know, you can't just say you want to have a better organization, but you don't know how to frame that. People can't follow what they don't have a leader giving them. So if you can't clearly communicate what it is that you want them to achieve, they can't run with it. If it's not written anywhere, you haven't said it, they don't see it, you can't you can't hold them accountable to something that you didn't give them the roadmap for. And so a lot of times it's kind of even that, putting that accountability and ownership on them to be able to communicate and disseminate appropriately across front from top to bottom. Because I know what you probably studying leadership, special organizational leadership, it's in the middle where it gets a whole lot of gray and a lot goes wrong in the middle. So I try to bring that balance when I come in and work with organizations.
Absolutely. I think it's easy to have ideas and goals, and then it's like there it reminds me of South Park. I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys ever, Chrissa hates South Park, but there's an episode called The Underpants Gnomes, and their whole business plan is step 1, steal underpants, step 2, question mark, and step 3 is profit.
Question mark.
Step 2 is question mark. And it always makes me think of The Underpants Gnomes when I see organizations, or when I see even individuals, as we're breaking down our goals into action steps, having that question mark in the middle. Well, step 1 is this, step 2, I don't know, and step 3 is I hit my goal and I live all my dreams. And so it takes such a intentional thought process to switch from to borrow from the E-Myth, right? The E-Myth book, to switch from our entrepreneur, right? The entrepreneur who's like, yes, let's go climb a mountain. And then to switch that to the manager, and the manager goes, okay, I got to get boots though, right? Like I need to Google, when is this mountain open and how much is it and how far is it, and right? And which one do I want to go to and who's coming with me? And all of these middle steps that end with me posting on Instagram that I climbed a mountain, right? And I think there are so many steps in between that's where a lot of people get lost, and a lot of organizations get lost in the middle. like you said, that messy middle, that step 2 question mark. So it sounds like you are able to break those visions down, those overarching goals down into those smaller pieces that then, again, to go back to the E-Myth, the mechanic in us, right? The technician that likes, do this, right? Pick this up, put this over here, type this email. Those are the words that likes those mechanical things to do. And if we can get our manager in place in ourselves, right? Our entrepreneur has the dream. The manager part of us says, here's how I need to do that. And then the technician can just go, okay, cool. Let me make that phone call. Let me do that Google search, right? Let me go to that boot store to make that dream happen. So it sounds like you're really focused on the middle part.
Yes. I mean, having worked in corporate America for 20 plus years, you see it. You see, I've literally been in the role because I do a lot of project management work, and when I'm actually in corporate working myself. And so you see how the project may be A, but you're working with like 10 organizations, couple of external stakeholders, and everybody has their own reason why, thinking, money, but everything. But nobody can say how they're getting there, And so from just seeing that over the years, and then just even my personal volunteer work that I do and done in the past, I just realized that's the part that needs the most work. That's the part, communication. It isn't, just one-sided, meaning a lot of times, you get a performance evaluation and they tell you all the things you did wrong, but there's no part in there of the accountability that they were supposed to help you to get there. And so it's almost like bringing both sides of the table and having an actual conversation and not a blind date.
I like that. The analogy of coworkers or on a blind date. You really are. You might, you talk to the person, you do the interviews, right? You might chat with that person or Snapchat with them for a bit before you go on that blind date, right? But once you're on the date, you're on a date with this person. And once you've either accepted a job working with somebody or you've hired somebody, you're on this date now. And it could go anywhere. And that communication is so important that it be a two-way street. And there are so many, great techniques to be able to create conversation, even out of a performance review, right? You put something on there that says, okay, your goal is to come to work at 9 a.m. every day because that's when work starts, but you've been coming in at 9:10, right? Observable behavior. It's not personal. Like, I still think you're great. But when you walk in the door, like, I can't argue with the fact that the clock says 9:10, right? So observable, right? And then being able to, we have on ours barriers. Like, what are the barriers to be able to do this? Because when we can acknowledge what are the barriers, and if it's like, because there's no parking in front, right? Like, I'm here at 8:45, but it takes me like 30 minutes to get in the door, right? That's a barrier, and that's a real barrier, right? Or I'm not sleeping well at night because I'm having anxiety at night, right? That's a barrier, and that's a real barrier. It's not something that the supervisor or the person in leadership can say, well, I'm going to help you fix your anxiety. But organizations that offer EAP programs, right? Our organization offers free counseling and free life coaching and free financial counseling and free attorney consultation, right? So those kinds of, like, I'm not the one who's going to help with the anxiety that's keeping you up at night, that's making you sleep in, that's making you late for work. But as an organization, we can put those things in place so that as your supervisor, you can go, that's a valid barrier. Like, I see that you're late to work, but like if you can't sleep at night because you've got anxiety or you've got racing thoughts at night, that's a valid barrier. That's something that we can offer you the support to help resolve that for yourself. And those pieces in place are so important when we're talking about that shared goal, because 9 times out of 10, both people want the same thing. Like, if it's my job to come in at 9 o'clock and I'm coming in at 9:10, like, I know that. Like, I know, and I don't want that. I want to come in at 9 because I don't want my supervisor annoying me all the time, right? So it's 9 times out of 10, you've got a shared goal. And
Yes.
being able to put those things in place at an organizational level to say, okay, we have to be asking about barriers. Like, we can't address any of those if we don't know what they are. So we got to be asking about them and validating them, and then trying to provide the resources, like the parking situation, right? Like, that's a real problem.
No,
And
it is. Trust me. It really is a problem. I'll give you a quick story. One of the companies I worked with, I was used to a parking garage, covered from the elements, you know, no weather hitting you, And then I went and worked for a different company, and their parking lot was as big as IKEA, and there was no garage. And then the building was big as IKEA. So when you said that part about you get there at 8:30 and it takes you 30 minutes, that literally was my story. I was like, this is crazy. This is insane. I'm like, how do you expect anybody to get here? Like, and so people would literally like come to work based upon like the parking schedule. And so they would come early just to try to avoid the parking. But they still wanted you to stay late. It was crazy, but I understand the parking situation.
absolutely. And it's something that, in business school, right? They're not talking about the parking lots, but those are the things that make a big difference in a team member's experience, right? Like, if I sit down at my desk and I'm already mad because I walked in the rain for 20 minutes, right? And I feel discombobulated because like all my clothes are wet and everything, like, that's not setting me up for that productive day, at work. So, all of these things, they matter. And it, like you said, the communication is so important, because even on something like a disciplinary action form or a review form, right? If we're saying this goal or this outcome is not being met, what are the reasons? Because most of the time it's not, well, I just don't want to do it. Like, sometimes it is, and that's a whole different situation. But most of the time it's like, I want to do that. I want to be successful. And we're like, we know, like, what's stopping this? Let's figure it out. And I think that those conversations are so important. I love the analogy of a blind date, because that's exactly what, right, needs to happen on that kind of date. Even if you talked to each other before, like, now you're in it. You're in a date together.
Yeah.
So your blog Talking with Tanya. So your blog Talking with Tanya, is this a blog directed for individuals who are trying to improve their leadership skills in general in their life, like in church or in their friend groups? Or is it a variety? Does it depend on the week? Who's
Yeah,
your
it's a variety. I mean, I started talking with Tanya when I had created a nonprofit geared towards young adults and mentorship. So, and I just kind of talked about, life, living, the things you may encounter trying to, pursue your dreams, pursue your purpose, make goals, trying to figure out how do you balance work, family, kids, bills, just different things. And so, from what is this, 2026? So about since 18 years ago when I started it, it's kind of went from a email to a video to audio to social media. So it's more all in itself. But it's just really kind of depends on the message that may be that I want to convey. One of the things I used to tell people about talking to Tanya was I used to tell people I help people to figure out how to fit the puzzle pieces of life together so that they could do life right and well. And so that's what I called that little piece of what I did was it was just a puzzle piece, to help you figure out everything you got going on. Because I want to help you wherever you're at. So that was kind of where it came from. But I still hope to try and do when I do share something.
It's kind of a theme through your work, right? Your work that you do with organizations, and then your work that you're doing with the blog, of bringing things together that can feel very disjointed, right? Like different parts of an organization, there are competing goals within an organization, all the different personalities, all the different motivations, and that running theme of bringing that all together cohesively. And with the blog, it sounds like there is a similar theme there, right? Of trying to go, okay, we have a tendency to be so compartmentalized that we don't always get to experience life as a whole person. I right now I'm experiencing life as a podcast host, and after that, I'm going to experience life as an employee, and then as a mom, and then as a wife, and so we have all these different pieces of who we are, and it's rare that we get to or that we even do sit down and look at, well, who am I as a whole,
Yeah.
and not a mom, right, and not somebody's coworker, but as a whole person. And that is so tricky in our world today, to bring that all together.
Definitely. Indeed. It's a challenge, but like you said, when we're able to show up as our whole selves, I think we'll be able to better understand each other. We're expecting people to just show up as one thing, but like you said, they were a mom literally 5 minutes before they walked in the building. They were a daughter when they did this. They were, and so I think the more we pay attention to who we are as a whole, the more we're able to actually just understand each other and welcome the people for who they are.
Yeah, I like that. The more that we're able to allow other people to be their full whole self, the more that we're able to be our full whole self.
Yes.
Yeah. So, as a certified life coach, you refer others to counseling, to mental health counseling and behavioral health counseling, and you've had a counseling experience yourself, and you noted it as a bad counseling experience, which I always love that. I always want to hear the bad counseling experiences, not because I want everybody to have bad counseling experiences, but I think that as we hear other people's bad counseling experiences, and we hear other people's mediocre counseling experiences and positive counseling experiences, it just helps take another layer off the mystery of counseling, and can take some of that power out of the fear of counseling when we hear that somebody else had a bad experience and they're okay. And that, and that if that does happen to me, I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm a proponent of counseling. I believe in it, especially with minorities often being raised to think it's not okay. It is okay. You should do it. You should get it. Just, I'm going to throw this first out. You should, just like you go get a physical, a woman's, you should go get your mental checkup at least once a year. That is my advice. Take it, run with it, call them today. Second, um, you know, I, to me, counseling is very personal and it's intimate. Is just as much when I think of counseling, I think of it similar to how it is when I enter into a mentorship relationship with someone. I need to know that I can respect them, you know, I need to know that I can respect them, I can trust them, and that they'll listen to me. Like those are at least my top three. And so this particular situation, I felt like I was on the phone with my homegirl. I'm just being honest. I was like, I, but I, it was, yeah, it was rough, and it wasn't like bad because she was my homegirl. It was bad because after I said everything I needed to say, she left me and was like, "Oh yeah, I would be mad too." And I was like, "That's it. That's it. Wait." And so I'll be honest, because it was through EAP, and I really was like, okay, do I want to keep trying to get EAP? Because I think at the time we may have had like 7 free sessions, or just want to find somebody and just pay them, regular out of pocket. And I gave it 2 more tries. And by the third try, I did end up getting someone that really helped for what I was needing to discuss and process and all of that. But yeah, I'm not saying that I need you to tell me everything I just said and your synthesis of it, but I need something better than I would have been mad to. Like it was that, yeah. Yeah, so but nothing as a person, nothing. That's just not what I needed. And so to add to your part of Julia, you saying, um, you know, there's bad experience, good experiences. That you take that with a grain of salt too, with what I shared about this particular experience. I don't necessarily think she's a bad therapist. She just wasn't the fit for me. And so that's why I said I likened it to a mentor. You have to find that right fit for you with the person that you're literally going to possibly tell stuff that you never told anybody about. Like if you don't trust them to handle you well and to cover and be there with you in the moment of it all, then you don't have the right person. If you aren't being transparent with them and you're having this fake and phony, then that's not the right person for you. Sometimes I tell people, especially when I suggest they go to therapy before they come back to coaching, I tell them, you know, you probably need to get somebody that isn't going to agree with everything you say. Because a lot of times that's what people would say a good therapist. Oh shit, no, they don't need to agree with everything you say. And they don't need to be your best friend either. Like they let them be what they're supposed to be to counsel you and to help provide, whether it's behavioral therapy, mental health therapy, whatever it is that you need. But um find your fit for sure.
Mhm.
My last and number one, find your fit.
I love that. And I love that you had that first experience because you learned from it. You took that and you reflected on it and you said, that's not what I need in a counselor for me. For me, I need somebody who's going to challenge me. I need somebody who's going to yes, empathy is wonderful. So it's great to hear. Well, I'm going to validate you because I'm going to say I understand why you're mad. At the same time, part of us knows our own nonsense, and so when somebody else reflects our nonsense to us, it can be like, oh, but that's nonsense, right? Because that part of us that knows and needs to be challenged on those things because we're challenging ourselves at some level as well. And when I hear your story, what it tells me is that you were going into those sessions ready for change. You were going in ready to do the work, and you were like, I don't need to waste time, right, on having a counselor who is just going to agree with me. I need to do the work. It's hard to have a counselor, challenge us and disagree with us or point out things that we're like, oh, I didn't want to know that. You're right, but I didn't want. And so it's hard to do those things. But you went into those sessions ready to do it and prepared to do it. And then you found a counselor who noted that you were prepared to do it and went right in with you. And I think that is such a beautiful story of finding, like you said, find your fit. I think it's beautiful. Not every therapist is for every person. I also love that you send people to therapy. Come back to coaching. Tell us about that. What kinds of situations?
A lot of times I get the question, either from clients or potential clients, or even just as on podcasts or interviews. And they say, well, what's the difference to you between therapy and coaching? And I said, if you think about a coach, especially a sports athlete coach, what are they doing? They're on the side trying coaching you along the way. They're helping you to get to that next goal, that field goal, that touchdown. They're right there alongside it with you. I said, whereas the therapist or the counselor, they're the ones that may go back and look at the playbooks and rewind the game and look at the play-by-plays and dissect it and analyze it, and then give you tips and tricks or whatever of what you need to do to change so you can to get better at your role. I said, so that's how I look at it, meaning you may not be ready for game day. You may have some goals that are great, but you forgot some of the steps that you needed to take, or you need to do some homework before you even can begin to even think about that goal. You know, I'm a big proponent. I don't say it like this mean, but I don't want you to make lofty goals and airy dreams. I want you to actually have something that's achievable and that you feel success and that you win at it. And so, with that being the case, if I know that you need to do some work with a therapist before you can even begin to get ready to do this next thing you want to do, that's that's what I'm going to tell you to do. I'm sorry, not sorry. I say that all the time, but sorry, not sorry. I don't want to take your money like that. You can definitely buy my books if you want to. You can find Taco Pena. You can even sign up for some of the classes. But if you need to do some work, I'd rather see you whole than to push you further than where you're ready to go.
I like that.
What a great analogy. I've heard the coaching analogy, the sports analogy. I have not heard your therapist is the one watching the tape with you. I love that. That is so right on. And going, hey, you see how you shift your weight to the right when you do that? Why do you do that? Right? It's like, well, because I'm launching myself at the ground. Right? So, okay, like what's going on though when you think about launching yourself to the ground, right? Like, what a great analogy. They're the ones, it always reminds, I'm from Massachusetts, so that reminds me of Tom Brady. Tom Brady would just sit and watch tape, and he probably still does, and watch tape of himself over and over and over, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. And what a beautiful analogy. All right, so people can find, like you said, people can find your books on Amazon, but also at shop.Tanya J Miller. And Miller, Miller, Tanya, Tanya, and then the initial J in the middle. What are some books that you would recommend, or what would you recommend if somebody's going to buy one and buy one? Which one would you recommend for somebody just new to your work?
I would say honestly, especially in the work that I know you all do, and the individuals that are probably tuning in every Sunday to the newest podcast episode. I would say my first project, which is called Mind Matters. And it's literally talking to you about getting out of your head, getting unstuck, and back on purpose is talking to you about getting your mind right, because so many times we have a lot going on up here. especially if you think a lot like me. It takes a lot to quiet your thoughts and your mind down. And so I just talk about it because sometimes we stay in there too long, especially introverts like me. We'll stay in there and we'll forget that we're supposed to be over here doing life with everybody else because, we may have some stuff going on and we're internalizing it. And so I just talked to you about some of those things or ways to identify if you're having that time or ways to help, or even if you're an individual that there's somebody you love and care and they're in a rough place. I even talked to you about how you can help them out and how you can, just be there for them. And so, especially with it being the holidays and the new year, yeah, you want to make sure you're ending it good and you're starting it good with a right mind. And so my first project, Mind Matters, but then I would also say my most recent project, which is A Right Mind Matters. And I just released that like last week. Yeah, Thanksgiving, Black Friday. So yeah, I would say those two, you know, getting your mind right, keeping it right, doing all the work, and choosing to be successful in your own terms, not according to the definition of anybody else.
Awesome. So Mind Matters could be a great Christmas gift to ourselves. And A Right Mind Matters could be a great New Year's gift to ourselves. And these seem like your work just really seems like it's for people who want to do the work, who want to work on themselves, who want to, dig into those things that are going on internally within ourselves. And it's not about other people; it's about what's going on in here. And so gifts for ourselves, Christmas gift or New Year's gift for ourselves. What a great fit that would be. So those can be found on Amazon or at shop.tanyajmiller.com. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here with us, Tanya. This has been a great interview, lots of information. You speak in analogies, which really, that gets me. I always love that. So if you could give one suggestion to somebody on the fence about starting either coaching or counseling, what suggestion might you give?
I would say you owe it to your past self, your present self, and your future self. You owe it to your past because you want to know what made you you and how you got here. You owe it to your present self because you want to be here living in the moment, and you owe it to your future self so that you can be um, equipped to be your best self. And so if therapy is something you've been thinking about, you're not just thinking about it just to think about it, you're thinking about it because you really know you need to do it. And sometimes those best friends and it are all the random people that you tell all your business to aren't the right people. And so let's get, go with a professional, go with somebody that's going to hear your heart and to um help you in the ways that you know you desire to be helped.
I love that. All pieces of ourselves, right, coming together: our past self, our future self, and our current self. And gosh, I do so many things I hate for my future self. I hope she appreciates it. So no, I think that's wonderful. And I think it kind of goes back to a distinction that you made previously when you were talking about that first counseling experience, where you said it felt like you were talking to a friend, it felt like you were talking to a girlfriend. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for, like you said, a professional. And so I love that distinction that you're making as well, not only between, the value of coaching, the value of mental health counseling, and then the value of friends. And yeah, it's valuable to talk to a friend, but not in the same way that it's valuable to talk to a life coach, and not in the same way that it's valuable to talk to a therapist, they all serve separate benefits and purposes. So
Definitely.
wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Julie.
Thank you.
I am Tanya J Miller, and I need a counselor.
Awesome. Me too. So does Chrissa. We all do. I was thinking when you were talking about how those counselors were through an EAP. We have an EAP here, and I was assigned a life coach through that EAP, and I'd never done life coaching before, and it just, it wasn't a good fit. And so then I got another life coach through the EAP. Love that, like absolutely love it. And so when you talk about, find your fit with therapy and with life coaches, it's so true, because that first one for me, I was like, I don't know. And it was my first life coach. So I was like, maybe this is what it's like. And then I got that new one and I was like, oh no, that's not what, this is what it is about. So absolutely love that experience. Wonderful. Well, if you are in Iowa and looking for outpatient mental health counseling services or in-home behavioral services for children, give us a call. If you are near any of our 6 office locations, we can do in-person for you, or we can do telehealth anywhere in the state. Our phone number is 800-531-4236.
And then, like Julie mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we post new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central. So save up whatever task you hate doing that week and listen to us while you get that done. And then we can help connect you with some of our resources and our guests that we have on our episode that week. And if you have any questions for us, you can reach us on our Instagram at You Need a Counselor Podcast, or on our Facebook page at You Need a Counselor Podcast as well. So I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.